Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 144. Can you believe it? The schedule for these is weird because I've been seeing Kat on like Sundays and Mondays now because of her schedule, and because we tend to watch things together that I want to talk about in the podcast. I'm like, I should maybe delay. Bringing the recording before that, right? Like I should delay it a little bit, so that I have more material to talk about here to you people. I also delayed a little bit because, wait, hang on. Did I put out an episode last week? Dude, I get so mixed up now. I've completely lost track of when I release and don't release episodes. I have to double check the dates now. I had a fun. I went camping for the first time in a while, sort of, kind of. It was more glamping than anything, because I got an invitation. Well, an invitation's a light way to put it. I was obligated to go to an Eagle Scout project. I guess people. I don't know. I don't know what people do and don't know about the Boy Scouts, or sorry, the Scouts BSA, which, as they're called now, which stands for Scouts, Boy Scouts of America. Why is my pop filter so weird? Let me adjust that. Once you, in order to get the rank of Eagle Scout, which is the highest rank, you have to complete a service project that you plan and make the budget for and fundraise and all that. So I did that. I have some one of my my closest friends in Scouts. I'm very close friends with their family, and they have some younger siblings who are finally getting their Eagle Scouts, or doing their Eagle projects. So I got a call from one of my best friends, and they said, "Hey, so you're busy this weekend?" And I was like, "Okay, yeah, I saw the email." So we went out. It was the first 2-day overnight project that I've been to. It was building a slingshot range at a certain camp, which was fun. I am not. So here's the thing about me and about Scouts. See, all of you guys listening to this, you think that I'm some brilliant genius artist, right? I'm I'm this incredible mind. But the people who know me primarily from Boy Scouts know me as the guy who is so incompetent that it's scary. Because there's a lot of Scout skills. Yeah, if you're in Scouts and you're going for your eagle, and you don't think that you're competent enough, or you don't think that you don't think that you've got it, you got what it takes, you don't feel confident, just know, I got it. I got my eagle. You can too. Yeah, the way my friend explained it to me was, they said, "Yeah, you're scary, but you're not intimidating." And I was like, "What does that mean?" And they're like, "Well," I'm paraphrasing here, but they're like, "Well, I'm not scared of you in the way I'd be scared of a school shooter or something. You don't have that intentional, you don't have that darkness in you. But yesterday when we gave you a power tool, I took an extra step back because I'm scared." I was like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." But it was fun. It was a success. And you know what? How I define the success of an Eagle project? It's you don't have to go to Home Depot during it. We had to do that during mine because it was for a stupid reason during mine too. So for my project, the idea was it was going to be for my high school's theater program. They needed a new paint cabinet to store for the crew to store all their paints in for painting the sets and all that, and they needed a better way to store the stage lighting. So the idea was I was going to build a big paint cabinet to the dimensions that the director said, "Oh, this would be perfect if we had the shelves were this high." So we were going to build that, and then carts carts that you could hang the stage lighting off of with like a rail, like 3 carts with like 3 rails that you could hang, because they're like these little hooks that they go on like poles and stuff. That's how the lights clip on, basically, so that you can store a bunch of stage lights. They had like what are they called? Like little flanks on the bottom, so that it's like a little box on the bottom that you can store extra stuff in. I think they still use them, actually, which is nice. It's been like 5 or 6 years since then. I think they still use them. The last time I talked to someone who I know is going there, and the whole deal, I felt so clever with my plan, was we were gonna cut. We had these 2x4s, and we were gonna cut them to get them to fit like a certain thing. We were like, for one thing, like we needed them to be a certain length, and then it just so worked out that the leftover pieces, the pieces that had been cut off, were the right length for a different part of the thing, right? For a different part of the build. And I was like, oh, we're gonna reuse it. It's gonna be super efficient. And it was a good idea, right? It was a good, clever idea on my part. And then during the actual project, and by we I mean I just kind of lost track of it, and like, yeah, I just it just like slipped my mind, because that was a little detail I didn't make a note of it, because I didn't think it would be that important to remember, but it was, because we ended up we were like, oh, for that other thing that we were going to use the leftover wood for, we just started using new wood for it, and now, oh, we have all this leftover wood that isn't cut, that we don't have any use for, so fuck. And all the wood that we used, all the wood that we just used, now we have to go replace that, because that was for something else. Fuck. Yeah. So it was a great idea, and it just slipped my mind. So we had to go to Home Depot and buy more wood. Yeah, anyway. So we were talking, and so when I say glamping, I mean anything that's not in a tent, anything that's not in a tent, that's glamping, right? By my definition. So my friend and I were in a cabin together, and like a nice heated cabin. It was like sick. And I was like, why haven't you ever invited me like to go visit down on your campus or anything? And we got to talking, and it turns out that they graduate next month, and like the weeks leading up to that are just gonna be finals. So we were like, oh well, I mean, if we're gonna do it at any time, and then like immediately they're forced to move out, like back home. And I was like, well, if we're gonna do it any time, it's probably gonna be like now. So it's like, why don't we just instead of going straight, like dropping me off back home, why don't we just head all the way back to your college, which isn't that much further away. It's like a few hours. And then I just spend a few days visiting on campus and like meeting the roommates and stuff. So that's right, guys. I walked around a real college campus. I was like behind enemy lines, that I was like an educated person. I felt like that guy from that meme where he's at the party. He's in the corner at the party, and he's thinking like, nobody knows that I don't actually go here. That was me. I was walking around. But no, it was cool. Got to visit and see the area and like go downtown and stuff. I don't want to say like what college, because I don't want to diggity dox them. Don't want to diggity dachshund them. Hey, hat dog, dachshund. Hey, I didn't even mean that. That's because I'm such a naturally funny guy. It just rolls off my tongue like rain off a leaf. So that was cool. Got to see the area, and I don't know. It was like, okay, so this is like a campus. And then naturally I got home, and my dad was like, what'd you think of the campus? And I was like, it's a place. I've never felt like a real intense connection to like certain places. It's never been like I walk somewhere and I'm like, oh yeah, no, I love that. I don't know if I've really felt that anywhere. Just like, oh cool, this is neat. Maybe I just need to travel more. Maybe I just need to travel out of the U.S. more. I don't think I've been out of the United States since I was like 11, 10 or 11, something like that. I don't think I've actually left the country. No, I haven't. I should. I probably should at some point. Just nothing's ever come up. Or there was good timing for me to leave. But yeah, what was he talking about? Anyway, yeah. I've never felt I don't know what campus would inspire me to be like, wow, I gotta go to school right now. But I don't know, that wasn't it. It was neat though. It was like, oh yeah, it's a bunch of buildings. Anyway, what was I gonna talk about? Oh yeah, we got a couple so I'm back home now. I'm rested. I'm working on the next video. I think it's gonna be fun. Let's look at the comments from last time. Play that music. I woke up like 30 minutes ago, so that's why I'm like this. I might also get horribly hungry in the middle of this, so let's read some comments. Why is that a blank tab? Anyway, okay, last time we had a question from Lozy, who said gambling would have to be taken to the extreme in games. Oh yeah, I was talking about gambling with Shotgun Roulette. He says, gambling would have to be taken to the extreme in games with some where every time you lose/die you have to buy another copy of the game. Why hasn't anyone thought of that yet? That sounds like a Yoko Taro idea, actually. That sounds like something, because he loves doing that thing where, like, yeah, at the end of the game, your whole save file deletes. He seems like he would be someone who would be like, yeah, the game actually bricks your console if you lose. It's to simulate the risk of you might lose everything. In which podcast did you talk about part 1? I don't remember hearing anything about cat watching JoJo before. Good question. I don't know if I mentioned this or if I neglected to. I might have mentioned it like way back when we started part 2 of JoJo, but in our rewatch. So, all right, this might be a little upsetting for some. The way that Cat's prior history with JoJo, besides jerking off to Johnny Joestar, has been she watched the anime for part 1 and then finished it, just the anime for just part 1, just like the first 9 episodes of season 1. And then she like stopped watching for a little. She like fell off of it and was like, let me get back into JoJo's. And for some reason she decided to do this by reading the manga for part 1, which has to be like one of the worst ways to ever get into JoJo's Bizarre Adventure ever. Watch the part 1 anime, stop for who knows how long, like a year, and then go and read the manga for part 1, which is like worse. It's like the worst version of even that story. So yeah, before we started, I was flabbergasted at that. And before we started part 2, I knew about that because I didn't know how much of it she'd seen or read, I guess. So I made sure to ask her, like, just make sure that she remembered basically what happened. Because honestly, there's not a lot of like, for going forward in the series, there's not a lot of important stuff for part 1. There's like a couple little plot details, like obviously the stuff with Dio at the beginning and at the end, the way that I made sure that, like, okay, you watched the last episode, right? Like, you know how it ends, right? Because that's kind of important. And she did. And I was like, all right, then we don't have to rewatch it. I'm not going to make you rewatch part 1. I like part 1. I do. I like it in the anime at least. But I'm not going to make you rewatch that. So we just jumped straight into Battle Tendency. And started on Stardust Crusaders recently. So we're only like 5 episodes in. She was interested in watching part 3. She was like, that was just the one that she was really curious about, which I didn't. It's a little different for me. I think it's funny the different, just comparing our experiences, because for me, I really enjoyed part 2, and then when part 3 started, I was not really on board with it at the start, but she is so far. We're only 5 episodes in. It's just finishing the episode where Polnareff joins the crew. So basically the squad is together now, and they go forward from there. So like the main cast has been assembled, and we're on our journey. And she's enjoying it so far. She says that she's liking it. I think she just likes it more than part 2. Obviously, I don't know how much it's so little into the actual season that I'm gonna wait until we're at least done with it to, I think, really talk about it again. And I'm also curious what she thinks about the rest of the first season, because I remember, okay, so first of all, I remember being really confused during part 3 at the beginning, because stands were this new thing. Hamon is like a complete ass-pull power set. Like, he just does whatever he wants with it. But for some reason, I felt like I kind of understood it. Like, there was like kind of like a logic to how Hamon worked in parts 1 and 2. It was just like kind of silly and did way too much stuff, and the rules around it were weird. But I felt like I was familiar with it. So when stands were introduced, I think a lot of people go into JoJo expecting stands, and they have to sit through like a whole season of this weird magical sunlight breathing karate thing, and they're like, what is this? Show me the stands. For me, I was just kind of going along with the ride, and which I think is the best way to enjoy JoJo. And when I got to part 3, that felt like kind of a weird break. It was like, oh, all right, well, I wasn't completely sold on stands yet, right? Like, I actually did have to be sold on the idea and that it was cool, and the early bits really didn't do it for me. I don't know when I started liking stands. Probably when Araki gets good at writing stand fights. Exactly during the Thoth fight. That's Thoth, right? Wait. No, it's Osiris. Thoth is his brother. All right. Exactly during the Osiris fight is like when stands get really interesting for me. But yeah, so okay, I don't want to like include the spoilers, but basically what happened, I remember watching the first couple episodes and just feeling, it's so funny that I didn't get this with Hamon, but I just felt like he's just making shit up. Like, I don't get it. Like, I didn't feel like there were very clear rules at the start of part 3 for how stands worked. And I get, like, I think on rewatch, it's a lot more clear to me now, having, like, okay, yeah, he's showing off the basic way that they work. They're, like, they can be physical, or they can kind of, like, phase through objects if they're, like, if they kind of, like, lower down in power. Like, they can be manifested more. They, damage that's reflected, like, damage to the stand or things that affect the stand will be, like, reflected onto the user kind of thing. And, like, a lot of that is demonstrated in ways that are like, just they just kind of happen. They don't have to be spelled out. But I felt like very, like, I didn't really get what was going on, or I just felt like I needed more information, because otherwise it just kind of felt, I don't know, sort of random, if that makes sense. I don't know if I agree with my past self, right? Rewatching it now, but that's how I felt at the time. So what I did was, okay, I just need rules. So I went on the wiki. I went on, like, the JoJo wiki, and to the page on stands, and I read, like, it broke it down into, like, bullet points about all of these different traits of how stands work that are mostly universal across the series, right? Obviously, there's a bunch of exceptions, but mostly universal. And then for some reason, the wiki ended up spoiling me on like the ending of part 3 because of a specific bullet point where it's like, hey, this can happen. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, why? Okay. And it wasn't like that crazy of a spoiler. I wonder if it's still there. Hang on, JoJo wiki. I think it was like the fandom wiki. Let me see if that spoiler thing is still there. Stands. Definition. I don't know if this article was like, what's like the limitations? Oh man, maybe this isn't. Am I remembering? This article might have literally just been rewritten. Oh, it was in the trivia, I think. I think it was in trivia. Because I was like, maybe there'll be some more details in trivia. It was something like that. But yeah, it was I got spoiled by the wiki, which was awesome. That was really cool. And it was like an unnecessary spoiler. Like, you really didn't have to include an example in there, but it did. Anyway, I'm enjoying part 3. I remembered how much I like Jotaro. Like, whenever I have this image in my mind of part 3 being really boring, but at least in like the first couple episodes, I really do enjoy Jotaro. Like, he's a very different kind of protagonist from Jonathan or Joseph. But I don't know. I really do have a lot of fondness for him. When I think of him as a character, I picture him like across parts 3, 4, and 6. And he's like in one scene in 5. And I like him in that kind of overall sense, but I've always had this idea in my mind of like, yeah, I don't know, Jotaro's he's a little flat in part 3, you know? Like, I like him as a whole, like the way that he develops as he gets older. Like, I think that's stuff is interesting and cool to see how he like changes in these sort of subtle ways. But in part 3, I totally get what he's going for, and he's this like no good kind of punk 17-year-old with a heart of gold. Like, I think it's adorable that, you know, every time his mom shows him any kind of affection, he's like, shut up, bitch. You're so fucking annoying. Jesus Christ. And she's like, oh, okay, Jotaro. And then the episode where Holly falls ill, that kind of like is the real inciting incident for the part's story of why they have to go fight Dio. When Holly's like curse essentially activates. The reason that little scene that I forgot about where Jotaro realizes that something's wrong because his mommy doesn't come to give him his goodbye kiss in the morning when he goes to school. Like, every single, like, I think there's even a scene beforehand where she does it and he's like, God, like, what the fuck? Why do you do that? Ugh. And then when she doesn't come to the door to give him a little kiss, he's like, something's wrong. Yeah, I'll talk more about like Jotaro, especially part 3 Jotaro, because I think I've warmed up a bit to him over time. I probably when we're closer to the end or when we're done with it, and I can talk about it in retrospect, because I don't know, he's a very simple character, but he's just like I don't know, there's things about him that I find there's a lot of like, I don't know, depth to him. Araki has this thing where Araki's writing style is he leans, how do I say this? For most of JoJo, the way that Araki wrote characters was in a more revealing way. I'm pulling out my like AP English from high school lessons where they were like, you know, there's 2 ways to flesh out a character. There's developing and revealing. And what a lot of writers are maybe like a mix of the two, or they lean more towards like developing. Araki is almost entirely focused on revealing a character. So basically, I mean, it should be probably self-explanatory from the names, but the difference is just that developing the characters, you flesh out the character by them actually changing their thoughts, their opinions, what they act like, their feelings about stuff, their viewpoint. That's developing. It's when they undergo a change. Revealing is when you flesh out a character by revealing stuff about them. And Araki very much writes in the latter. He very much writes that second way, at least until like part 7. Part 7's where he started really, I feel like, writing characters, focusing a lot more on characters like changing over time. So when I say like revealing, it'll be things like, okay, so if you've ever read, I think there's a good video covering this. It's called like How Araki Writes a Character, and it references his book, Manga in Theory and Practice. And he basically talks about how his process for creating a character is he has like literally a big sheet, like a 2-page document of information about them, and it's very basic stuff like their name and where they were born, how old they are, all the way to kind of more specific details about them, like do they have any scars on their body, do they have any like birthmarks, do they have what are their hobbies, what kind of does their personality lean more towards this or more towards that, do they keep pets, how do they feel about animals, do they like plants, and these very specific, all the way from like very broad things like what are their fears and anxieties, who are the people that they look up to, who are the people that they hate. And I think the way that he writes makes a lot of sense when you keep that in mind, because he basically starts with the character already like fully formed, essentially, and the process of the story is just them revealing more things about themselves. And that's how a lot of early JoJo kind of works, and that's, I think, why it feels a little it's a very like characteristic part of his way of storytelling. Like a character doesn't like, oh, I'm gonna completely change now. There are like small developments. Characters like might gain more respect for each other. He really likes doing that one. But for the most part, it's like, this character is introduced in this way, and because of his writing style, it's of course very over the top. It's usually very exaggerated and kind of silly. And then suddenly you see this other part of them and you're like, oh, okay, there's like a contrast, or there's something else. Like Jotaro is exactly that. He's this punk. I love when he's fighting Kakyoin and he says something like, I'm Jotaro Kujo. I get into fights, and sometimes I don't pay my bill at the restaurant that I eat at. But you're pure evil. It's so funny. It's so funny knowing that, like, I think Jotaro gets a lot more interesting as a character when you realize that he's like this 17-year-old kid. It doesn't, the art style doesn't do him many favors, but he is a 17-year-old kid who has this absentee father and this mother who's kind of like a little too soft on him. And he's just trying to figure out, and so he like Jotaro doesn't have like a real male role model in his life, so he bases his idea of what being a man is on like movies that he's watched. Like he makes all these different references to movies over the course of the part, which are of course are things that Araki also likes. But that's like, right, like he feels like he has to be like the man of the house, but he has no idea how to do that. So he has to pull it from culture. And so he's halfway between being like a cool stone cold badass and also like this kid who's trying way too hard to seem cool and like doing stuff that he thinks would be cool in a movie. And that's what I love about early Jotaro. And then you see him like stop doing that in part 4 and you're like, okay, yeah, he actually grew up. Anyway, I don't want to get too into it, but I'm enjoying part 3 so far. I'm really liking the little like horror elements in it. You can tell Araki loves horror movies with how many little just moments of like fear or tension there are. Like the scene where Joseph, no, Avdol. I think it's Avdol finds Holly on the ground after she's collapsed. It's like and like the fridge door is open and you can't see her. It's like a horror movie, you know. It's like he's about to find a murder victim. Yeah. Anyway, I'm liking part 3. I'll get back to it when we finish it or when we get further in. I want to talk about a quick little news update. The System Shock remake is getting a patch. Okay, let me yeah, okay, let's go on. Yeah, PC Gamer. So, it's getting an update, and I thought this was really funny because there's two real, I'm assuming there's going to be like bug fixes. It's called an overhaul update. Bug fixes, probably other stuff. I don't know. They said it was big, but they didn't go into. I don't think they went into the exact detail of it, of what exactly is in there. But the thing that everyone was focused on was that there is now you can choose a female protagonist. For some reason, everyone was really excited about that. I was like, what? Okay, neat, I guess. It wasn't something that really occurred to me because you see the main character like 2, maybe 3 times in the entire game. One of them is like the game over animation where you can't even really see their face. So like, all right, maybe the voice lines are going to be a little different. Sorry, the grunts are going to be different because like you don't talk. Everyone was focused on that. You know what I was focused on? The revised ending. That was like, I can't believe it. I can't believe I did this. Okay? I did this. This was all me. It was because I bitched about the ending when I talked about the game on this podcast. If you don't remember, the System Shock remake of a classic game from 1995. I love the original System Shock. Was it 95? It was 95, right? Or 94. It was around then. I love System Shock, and I thought the remake was great. I thought it was a legitimately really good remake. If someone is like a little hesitant about playing an old, slightly janky kind of game, even though I think the original holds up pretty well, I would totally recommend them to go play the remake to kind of like, you know, get their feet wet with the series. Really good remake, except with one big asterisk, and that asterisk was the ending section of like the last boss was notably worse than the original. I thought it improved there's like, when I say improved, there's things that I like about the original System Shock that got changed, but I like those things because I'm a freak, but I can recognize that they make a lot of sense to update. The main problems with the game, that like the actual legitimate problems, with like some of the weapon balancing and the cyber world, the hacking sequences, all that stuff got updated and I thought was way better. I thought that was much better executed in the remake. Like exactly what I wanted out of it. But the ending, for some reason, which I didn't even think the ending was particularly bad in the original, in the remake is just really bad. It's like a completely different, you know that? Oh my god, I feel like this is a very deep reach. Because I don't want to exactly spoil what it was. You can go look it up, I guess, if you want. It's like, it's not even like the ending story-wise. I mean, like the gameplay segment of the final boss, basically. There's this old... Okay, hey, did anybody ever watch Digressing and Side Questing by Ronnie Ani Edwards on the Game Theorists channel? Rest in peace, dude. he made some really cool videos about game design back in like the early to mid 2010s before he became MatPat's editor and like never made a video of his own again. You can probably still go watch them. And I remember this video of his about it was called, what was it called? I think it was called Space Shooter Out of Nowhere. And it was basically this phenomenon that would happen in certain like older games where the gameplay style for the whole game was this one thing. You're doing this one thing with this set of mechanics and systems and kind of level design, and then randomly for the final boss it switches to a space shooter because I don't know why the developers thought it would be climactic, but now you're adjusting to it. It's completely unfulfilling because it's a totally different gameplay style. You basically have to learn the ropes of it on the fly. Nothing that you've been learning so far carries over into the actual climax of the game, and even though it's supposed to be cool, but it ends up just coming off as kind of lame and underwhelming for that reason. It's not satisfying. That was the ending of the System Shock remake. It's not a space shooter, but it's the same principle. It's the space shooter out of nowhere. I think that whole video was just in general about like being consistent with what mechanics kind of build up. Mechanics tell a story in and of themselves, and the more complex they get, that's like, you know, the story adding tension or adding more elements, and the final boss of your story should also be like the final boss mechanically, right? Yeah. So there's something about that. But that's basically like the problem I had with the remake. It was a real space shooter out of nowhere. SSOON, space shooter out of nowhere. SSOON. It was a real SSOON moment. That kind of put a real damper. Even when I watched my friend Prox play it on stream, he really enjoyed the remake. He played the original and the remake back to back to see the difference. And even he, who was like very, very excited about the remake the whole time playing it and enjoyed it a lot, was like, man, that ending does suck. So what will the ending be? All I needed them to do, you know what, fuck it, I can't spoil it. It doesn't matter. It's going to get updated anyway. You're going to play that version anyway. My whole problem, to reiterate, with the ending of System Shock Remake was that the whole game up to that point had been basically two different gameplay styles. There is the real world, on the ground, walking around, doing your horror immersive sim, exploring, finding items, solving puzzles thing in first person, shooting enemies, all that good stuff, finding key cards and, you know, tracing your steps back around the space station, all that good stuff that you're doing. And then there's the hacking segments where you go into cyberspace and it turns into a kind of flight simulator-esque, like a shooter, a much more arcadey feeling shooter in these little kind of enclosed rooms where you've got these combat encounters versus like the firewall antivirus kind of things that Shodan is throwing at you. So in the original, I found the cyberspace sections to be very, very disorienting and kind of confusing because of it's all wireframes and it looks the graphics were just too primitive at the time to, I think, really communicate what they were trying to do. It's very 90s cyberspace, but when you actually have to play it, you're like, oh god, I feel sick. The remake touched it up just enough to make it about like, okay, this is like basically squarely about combat encounters. This is all about flying around and shooting and avoiding and ducking and weaving and spinning around, right? And they made it feel pretty good and not confusing. And I was like, oh, awesome. So because the final boss of the original takes place in cyberspace when you got to hack into Shodan to destroy it for good, that's going to be the end. It's like there's going to be a big whole section going up, because I mean those whole like last two levels of the space station. Really, you know, that's like putting all of your skills to the test for the of the on the ground, the meat space stuff, and then the cyberspace stuff. That's going to be like the final boss, and everything's going to tie around. There's going to be a big, difficult, crazy final boss in cyberspace, facing off with Shodan, and then the actual ending of the remake is you go into cyberspace and you're like on the ground and you have a weird cyber gun, and it's like the ground controls, but you're just like shooting at stuff. You're shooting at targets, and then there's a big squid in the center that's Shodan, and you shoot at it, and it's not really clear if you're doing damage, and like enemies pop up, and the enemies are clearly not designed for this like on the ground style of gameplay. Like they're designed for you to be like floating around in space and able to move in 3 dimensions. And then because of that, you like die a lot, because you die like instantly. And when you die, you just get respawned exactly where you were standing, so it feels pointless. And it's just like, okay, all right. And then you shoot the big squid enough times, and it's like, oh, I guess I did damage to it. And then Shodan dies, and then you win. And it was like, oh, that kind of sucked and was slow and kind of confusing. And, you know, it was a SSOON. And it was genuinely my biggest complaint with the game was, how did they even come up with something this bad? It felt like so obvious what they should have done. So I am extremely interested to see what the 1.2 update will be. In fact, at the very end of this article, the business development director, Larry Cooperman, says, quote, "A lot of the criticism that we received was, you spent this whole game collecting items, gearing yourself up for this big battle, and then all of your stuff was gone. You're, oh, no, wait, that's not Larry Cooperman. Who's Kick? Which one is Kick? It's like an interesting name. Stephen Kick, the Night Dive founder. Yeah, he said that. You're left with just this one weapon to play what boils down to a mini game. It's been completely reworked. Thank God. Just make it a cyberspace section and make it like a crazy combat encounter. That's all I want. That's all I want is like a crazy cyberspace combat encounter that pushes it to the limit, you know? For the final battle, the final climax. That's all I wanted. So that was exciting, and I just found it funny that everyone focused on on the female playable character, and I was like, the revised ending? Reworked ending? What do I want to talk about? We watched, okay, this is a quick aside. So for some reason, I forgot to mention this on the last episode, we watched the whole Madagascar series, including like the Penguins of Madagascar movie. Those movies are weird. It's a weird trilogy because the first 2 movies are like exactly what you'd expect. I wasn't really expecting the first one. Okay, the first one's actually a little strange because the whole premise is all these animals from the New York Zoo, they get stranded on the island of Madagascar. And Alex the lion, there's like this, so like, it's like, oh, he's mad at his zebra, at Chris Rock's zebra, for getting them stranded on this island. That's like the conflict for the first half of the movie. And during the second half, he gets like acclimated to the island life, and he actually starts to enjoy being in the wild and all that. And his like natural predator instincts start returning to him, and he like starts seeing all of his friends as like meat, just like big steaks for him to devour. And it's like, oh, and like he wants to kill and eat them. And I wasn't really expecting that. I wasn't expecting the climax of the movie, or the whole the real conflict of the second half of the movie, to be about the main character having to like struggle against his dark predator instincts. The second movie is just it's just like where do I found my people, but do I fit in? Which I've said before, I don't really care about stories like that. What even happens in there? I barely remember anything. And then the third, but it's like fine. Oh, the fucking Moto likes you, and like the big hippo comes out of the water, and it's playing I like 'em big, I like 'em chunky. And I was like, oh my god, I can't believe that they did that. They made the hippos like all, they made like, okay, this is like subtext, but like all the hippos are like black, right? They all have like black voice actors, and they made specifically that one I like 'em big. And I was like, all right, what's going on here? Yeah, but it's like fine. It's perfectly fine. Decent enough movies to like do our stupid thing where we make dumb comments about it while watching it. And then the third movie is weirdly pretty good. Like genuinely pretty good in a lot of ways. And we found out it was written by Noah Baumbach, who is one of the co-writers of the Barbie movie with Greta Gerwig. What else did he do? Noah Baumbach. The writer, I believe, of Marriage Story. That like character drama. Yeah, he wrote Marriage Story. He wrote all these like little like indie kind of like, or like very small like character focused screenplays. The Life Aquatic, like he's a screenwriter on like actually like a very noteworthy writer of like these very, I guess, kind of, you'd consider them kind of like highbrow, like well-written character dramas and stuff like that, or like weird experimental films. And then randomly he also wrote Madagascar 3, and you know what? It's a genuinely pretty funny movie. There was a lot of like actually good jokes in it that we were laughing at. Like we were laughing, okay, the first two movies, it was more of us laughing at the movie than with it, if you know what I mean. Madagascar 3, we were laughing with the movie, like stuff that was supposed to be a joke. Because like the timing is better. Like there's, you know, writing comedy is a real skill. And writing funny jokes is a real skill. And this is also on, you know, the animators, the storyboarders, the voice actors. But like just the comedic timing is way better. The little like shot and then like a twist on it where it's like this thing, oh wait, actually this thing happened. It like actually got us a couple times. It was pretty funny. There's some really good visual gags in it. It was actually a pretty fun movie to watch. It still got like that very, it's a very classic, a tried and true kids movie staple, which is you lied to us. Conflict. It's that kind of a plot, but all the stuff surrounding that is genuinely pretty funny. Like I legitimately enjoyed it. And then the Penguins of Madagascar movie was fine. I don't know. So that's the weird thing is, okay, we found this out. So you watch the first Madagascar movie, and easily the best part about it are the penguin characters. They're the most amusing. You're like, why don't these guys have a TV show? Why isn't this movie about them? And then, oh wait, they made a TV show. Oh wait, they did. And I found out, hang on. Where is the... I have to find the Penguins of Madagascar. Yeah, okay, the movie. Okay. Because so the guy who I think directed the original, yeah, Tom McGrath, he directed the original Madagascar. He directed all three of them, actually. And was he a writer on it? Director, writer. Yes, he was a writer. He wrote and directed the movie. So that means that he wrote the Penguin characters. He's also the voice of Skipper, the leader character in the Penguins. And when they made the TV show, he was one of the only people who returned, like, reprised his role to play Skipper. And a part of me is like, did he write these movies? Did he actually want to be making Penguin movies the whole time? Did he just want to be writing and directing and playing his, like, is Skipper like his persona? Does he just want to be this like little penguin guy? He just really, it really feels like a part of me, like there's a conspiracy theory in my head that Tom McGrath wanted to make like a thing based around these penguin characters that he'd come up with, because they really feel like they're just doing their own thing in the movie. They have their own dynamic. They play off of each other really well. They're just kind of fun characters to watch. And then they were the studio or someone was like, no, we can't market that. We don't want to do that. And he was like, what if we made it about some other animals, like a lion and like a zebra and stuff, and we get Chris Rock to voice the zebra, and we get Ben Stiller to be the lion, and Jada Pinkett Smith is the hippo? I didn't even realize that. David Schwimmer's the giraffe. Like, we get a bunch of celebrity voices. We get Andy Richter to be a little marsupial, you know? We get Cedric the Entertainer. Sacha Baron Cohen. I forgot Sacha Baron Cohen is Julian. I forgot about that. Yeah, and then they were like, oh, that sounds like a great idea. And then he snuck his penguin characters in. And then they became like the biggest parts of those movies, because they are the best part of those movies. They are like the most fun characters to watch. So that's my thoughts on Madagascar. I remember watching the show a lot as a kid. That was on like Nickelodeon all the time. That was one of their series that they just churned out. There was like 3 or 4 seasons of that thing. I remember it being pretty fun. I want to mention... So I mentioned how I completely fucked up my sleep schedule to play to 100% the original Lego Batman. I played the second one. I have also 100%ed it. And you know what's weird? Lego Batman 2 feels like a bigger game, right? It feels like a bigger game. It's the first one where they tried out this big open world free roaming style. But it took me 10 less hours to complete 100%. And which is weird because it didn't necessarily feel like it was much shorter. And I'm like, not, it's so weird to me. It took me like the original, let's see. Let me look at my timings. Lego Batman, oh my God, my voice. Lego Batman 1, 40 hours. Lego Batman 2, 32 hours. Significantly less. Like, that's like a whole, basically 10 hours shorter of a runtime. But it didn't like necessarily feel like that. It wasn't like, oh, this game feels thin. Like, it felt like there was a lot of content. But it just didn't, I don't know, it just went by faster. It's because I'm so good at these games. It's because these games have a very high skill cap, and now I'm really good at them because I played the first one. No, so what do I think of Lego Batman 2 compared to its predecessor? It is a messy game, but not bad. There's like a kind of inherent, I mentioned this with the first one, there's kind of an inherent solidness, a solidity to the Lego formula. Like, they would have to really fuck it up to make these games not fun on, like, just kind of a basic level. It's just kind of fun to go around. It's very simple, straightforward gameplay. do the beat 'em up stuff with the enemies, build stuff, solve little puzzles, go through the levels. Like, very solid, kind of like, I guess I'd call it like a simple, well-rounded formula. Kind of funny because they're bricks. So with the second game's big innovation is that I'm pretty sure this is the first time they did an open world. I didn't know that going in. So it was a bit of a surprise to me. I just went in blind. It was a bit of a surprise to me when it dumped me into the open world after the first level. And when I say messy, so one of the things that I mean is that there are basically two parts to this game. The way that it's structured is a little weird. It's not weird, but it's not very well communicated at first. You have to... Okay, well, so basically what it is there are still discrete, like, levels that you load into, and they are their own things. But you access those levels by going around an open world. And so you do the first level, and then it's like, hey, here you are in Gotham City. And you're like, oh, what is this? Like, what? There's a bunch of stuff. There's stuff over there, stuff over there, and then the game does not ease you into the open world aspect at all. It essentially drops you in and says, okay, you're here. Now go back to the levels, and you have a little waypoint like trail that just says, go back here, go over to this area to get to level 3 or whatever. And you're just kind of driving past all of this scenery because it's a pretty decently sized map. The open world map in this game is a really nice size. It's not too big. It doesn't feel small. It's essentially 3 big islands, and they have a bunch of stuff on them individually. It feels fairly dense, which is nice. Like, you'll never go very far and not see something like some kind of landmark or something like that. So I like the open world. I think both parts with like halves of this game are pretty good on their own. I don't think the open world is bad. It just doesn't like it. They don't feel integrated very smoothly. So you've got like the distinct levels, which are just like they've always been. You know, it's you go through, you do the same kind of gameplay. There's collectibles in there for you to replay for you to replay the levels on free play mode, and where you can like get all the stuff because you have more characters to use, that kind of thing. And then the open world aspect is this free roaming environment where you can there's a bunch of different collectibles and stuff, like a bunch of stuff to collect, which I don't mind because it's a Lego game and all that, and you know, you kind of expect that in sort of a big open world such as this. So essentially what I figured out is the way that I really wanted to play the game was I tried to engage between levels. It was weird because there was no breathing room in between levels. Beside that, the game kind of like mandated, right? Again, like there's no easing in process. So I always felt a little bit like, oh, I should just go to the next thing. And that I should go to the next level, partly because playing... So a lot of the content in the open world is like every single rooftop, it feels like, has some kind of obstacle course on it. Where like you'll start at the bottom of the building, and then there's some kind of series of challenges or obstacles that you like work your way up and around a series of buildings, and then you get to the top and you get rewarded with a gold brick, which is like the main real collectible of the game. That's your progress marker. There's like 250, and you can get 3 from the levels if you like fulfill certain requirements. And there's 15 levels, so that's like, what's 15 times 3? 45. So you can get 45 from them. The vast majority are out in the open world by doing these little obstacle courses or these little challenges. Like you break this number of objects within a certain period of time. You know, usually like kind of easy, not very difficult to figure out, but just the sheer volume of them is the challenge, right? and finding them and all that. You can like detect them on your map and stuff. A lot of them require other characters. Once you beat all of I found out, okay, so once you beat, there was stuff that I couldn't access because I couldn't interact with a certain mechanic. And then I found out, oh, okay, once you beat the game, once you beat all the levels, you unlock free play in the open world. So I was like, all right, you know what I'll just do? I'll just go through all of the levels, unlock free play, and then I'll focus on the open world and like cleaning that out. So that's what I did. And it led to this kind of, yeah, like, not inconsistent, but like very pendulum swingy experience where the first half of my playtime was all doing these like specific levels. And then the second half was just going through the open world and completing that stuff and getting all the gold bricks and characters and stuff. Because that's how you unlock the majority of characters, is actually through the open world, which felt a little, I don't know, I actually kind of liked it. Essentially, there's a bunch of little beacons around the city for these like terminals, these like bat computer terminals. And once you activate them, they turn from red to blue, and then you can summon any vehicle, or like the appropriate vehicle for the area, like a car, boat, or like plane kind of thing, depending on where it is. But then every beacon, once you activate it, you'll get a little shot that there's a villain character in the area. And then you have to go find them, and then you play a little like miniature, a very small like little fight with them, and then they like, you can arrest them. And then that's basically how you buy them. The idea is that you're like, you beat them and then you get to arrest them and you unlock them. And that's how you unlock the majority of characters in the game, is through like, because most of them are villains, is through beating them in the open world, finding and defeating them, and then unlocking them that way. And that was like fun. I thought that was neat. That was like a neat kind of flavor, bit of flavor for that mechanic, or that aspect of the game. And once you unlock enough characters, you can kind of just, because it does that thing that most Lego games do, where it's like, most of the differences between characters are they can interact with this mechanic and other characters can't, because they have this particular ability or trait to them. So you're just kind of like hard gated off from getting certain things until you have a character who can access that. And I'm pretty sure almost every single mechanic, there's at least like one character who can, a lot of them are like locked to like the specific like suits, the alternate suits. That was like one of the things, I might have mentioned that in the first, when I was talking about the first game, but I can tell that they ran into this hurdle where they were like, okay, well, if the majority of the game you're playing as Batman and Robin, you're not really getting a lot of variety with characters, so let's add in all these alternate suits to give them different gameplay mechanics. There are alternate characters who can do most of those mechanics. Like you can fill them in, and you don't actually have to, like, you don't require the suits to go through if they're needed. What the fuck am I talking about? I'm getting like all jumbled up. So you'll like come to these buildings, and again, I said they're like obstacle courses, and at the very bottom there'll be like a suit change thing, and you might have to change between a couple different of the suits as you go throughout the course. But I realized, I was like, wait, okay, so this one suit is the only one that can break glass, and I would, the top of this, the gold brick, the whole obstacle course is you're working your way up to get to that suit, and then you get to the brick which is encased in glass, and then you break it with that suit. But you can unlock, there's like two other characters who can break glass on their own, so you can just like fly up there and just skip the entire obstacle course. That might have been why I beat this game so much faster, because I realized that you can just skip a lot of the gameplay and just like head straight to the gold bricks, and then switch to the character who can access that mechanic essentially. But I did like the open world. I liked exploring it. I liked kind of figuring out what I needed to do. It was just, again, like very simple kind of light gameplay, but getting the completion and seeing the number go up was satisfying. I don't know if it's a gripe with the levels themselves. This is, okay. The first game was like all Batman and Robin. This game opens as a Batman and Robin game, and then it turns into a Batman and Superman game, like a third of the way in. And Robin just disappears. And it's weird, because Robin has all of these alternate suits, and it feels like there would be a lot of gameplay stuff done with them. But no, the majority of the game, you are Batman and Superman. And is there a problem with that? I don't know. It felt like, when I said, like, again, messy. Like, it feels like it's splitting its attention a little much in terms of the gameplay. Because it's like, okay, you introduce all these different Robin suits, and then he doesn't show up for, like, most of the game. He just there's not even an explanation for where he goes. He's just gone. And you're just Batman and Superman. And there's, like, a mild problem with that, because Superman is, like, ridiculously overpowered in this game. He has so many. He can fly. He has the super strength, which lets him interact with super strength objects. He has heat vision, which lets him destroy certain objects. He has the freezing breath, which lets him like do stuff like freeze water, which you can use as like a platform and stuff like that. Is there anything? I think that's mainly it. It's essentially like all of the suits that Batman or Robin would get, just like combined into one character, and he just gets all of this stuff. Also, he's like completely invulnerable. He's actually just can't take damage. The game treats him like a vehicle. He has like the silver invulnerability hearts, and when he walks into enemies, he like runs them over and they get flattened. The game treats him like a vehicle, basically. So for most of the game, I was always on Superman unless I had to switch to Batman because there was a Batman specific thing that I had to do. And then I would switch back to Superman. Oh, also he has X-ray vision, so he can interact with like certain puzzles where you need to like look through things. He just has so much shit. He has so much shit. He's such an overstuffed character, which like, yeah, that's what I would want Superman to be. But gameplay wise, it feels very lopsided. It really feels like Batman gets outshone in his own game, which is kind of like the problem of like a Batman-Superman team-up, or that's like the challenge, right? Is like, well, how do we make it so that Superman just doesn't win everything immediately because he can solve all the problems? What challenges do we throw at them, and what distinctions do we make between these two characters so that there's actually, we can focus equally on them? Yeah, so you're doing that for most of the game. And it's like, you know, the gameplay is still good, but it doesn't, it's weird to say that it doesn't feel challenging because I'm just invulnerable Superman for most of it, but because, you know, these games are not very difficult in the first place, but yeah, you just kind of feel like you waltz through it. He's the little brother character. He's the character that you give to your little brother who doesn't know how to play video games. So that he can have fun and feel like he's doing stuff. And then you are like the Bat Mule. Slugging it out with the regular human beings. Oh, and then randomly at the end of the game, in like the penultimate like 2 or 3 levels, they're like, we gotta call the Justice League together. And like they just add a bunch of characters into the mix. With like a couple unique mechanics. Like, the Flash is the only one who can build very specific Lego objects. How many times did this show up in the game? Like, a couple. Oh, yeah, Robin's back. Guys, remember he's back. Hey, remember how he had that ice suit with, like, the freeze ray? Here's a switch. Like, literally, in the penultimate level, it says, like, the ice suit can activate ice switches. They're these just little things that you shoot with the ice ray. And it's like a switch that can only be activated by that. And I was like, this thing's going to show up like twice tops. And yeah, that's exactly it. It shows up one more time later in that same level, never in the last level, and then once or twice in the open world. It's like, what was the point of that? Like, again, like, messy, like, weird, mechanically wasn't, I don't know, it feels like it's doing a little too much. It feels a little unfocused. Unfocused is how I would describe it. Not bad, just lacking a very sharp focus on a certain set of mechanics. A lot of variety, but not particularly meaningful, because most of that variety is, again, in that very Lego way of like, well, this is different because this character is the only one who can interact with this thing. And it's like, it functionally feels very arbitrary. So, not bad at all. Like, again, I had fun, you know, it was fun to 100% it. Oh, you know what wasn't fun about 100%ing it? The fucking, oh, okay. I got to rant about this. So, I mentioned in the first one that the vehicle sections, the vehicle levels in the first game were the worst levels. The vehicle levels in this game have been essentially reworked. They're basically all on-rails shooters, which I think is fine. I don't mind that. It's whatever, you know. Until you get to the open world stuff. And there's a number of challenges in the open world to get, like, gold bricks where you have to use a vehicle. And they're all basically the same thing. It'll be like, excuse me, you know, you'll go to one of the boats, and you, in order to get the gold brick, you have to complete this thing where you're driving, you drive a boat where you're basically just driving through a series of gates. There's like a time limit, and it gets reset each time you drive through the next gate, and you just got to get to the end, and then you're rewarded with the gold brick, right? Okay, fine, fun. The flying vehicle challenges. Now, I know this is a superhero game, but I have to question the decision to take their inspiration from Superman 64, because it is flying through rings. It's the exact same premise of like going through a series of gates, except it's like hoops in the air, basically. Now here's the problem with that is the flying controls suck ass for the vehicles. They suck if you need any level of precision. Like, for instance, if you're trying to hit a certain target or something, fly through a certain target. So here's the way that it works. So all of the vehicles, and it works differently. So there's flying characters, right? The flying characters aren't quite as bad. Essentially, with them, if you double jump, you'll initiate flying. And then you go into flying mode, and you've got this little cursor, and you move the cursor around, and once you drag it to the edges of the screen, that'll make them either like turn left or right, or go up and down, which is weird. In order to ascend or descend, you have to like drag it all the way to the top, which is, and then you'll like the camera will like flip downwards, and it's a little disorienting, and you can't really see what you want to see. Like, there were so many moments where I just wanted to fly up and observe, but I couldn't do that because as I'm ascending, I am just pointed straight at the sky. But it's like, okay. And then you use the jump button will make you fly forward, and then the special button will make you drop. It'll make you descend. So you don't have to like drag the cursor all the way to the bottom. The flying vehicles use the same controls that all the vehicles do, which is that the jump button moves forward and the special button moves back. The attack button shoots. The switch button just makes you jump out of it, I think. Yeah, you just jump out of the vehicle. So for like the boats or the cars, that's fine because it's just on two axes, right? Just X and Y. When you add in that Z axis, you know, that third dimension, and now there's like ascending and descending, those vehicle controls do not hold up. They need like an extra button or something. The only way to go up or down is to drag the cursor all the way to the top or bottom of the screen now. And when you do that, the vehicle will awkwardly drop in these very stuttery, weird movements. And you'll also probably be moving forward at the same time. And let me tell you, this thing is ass for any kind of precise movement. It sucks. There were so many times where I had to redo one of these stupid ring challenges 2 or 3 times because, oh fuck, I overshot it. Now I gotta like back up and then I gotta rate, and then the timer's out. It's so awkward and unwieldy feeling. It's still the worst part of the game. Thankfully, there's only a handful of them if you want to 100% the game. But man, they have not figured out flying controls. I wonder if it gets any better in the future, but not in this game. There's half as many levels in the second game as there are the first. The first has 30 levels. This one has 15. But the levels feel twice as long. Like which is, I think, is like fair. I didn't mind so most of the levels in the first game are like 3 rooms and a boss. And I didn't mind that too much because those levels felt to me like I kind of got the feeling of, oh, it's like, this is a very me thing. I mean, I know it's like it was more so a limitation on their part, but to me it felt kind of like playing inside of a Lego set, which I thought was neat. You know, this tiny or this smaller area, because those rooms, there's only 3 rooms, but those rooms feel very dense. You know, there's like a couple combat encounters and a few puzzles and some extras on the side that you kind of like, oh, I should come back here. And that stuff made those feel, dense. Like there was a lot to do in them. So it's only 3 rooms, but you're spending like maybe 5 minutes each, 5+ minutes in each of them, doing all the stuff, breaking everything, trying to find as many secrets as you can. And that was fun. These are like twice as long, and the content feels a little more spread out, but pretty good. You know, same, pretty solid, fine level design that these games tend to have. It usually didn't feel like they dragged on too long. I'm trying to think if there was any levels that I felt really just went on for too long. Not really. I've had more bugs. I've had more experiences with bugs in the second one than I did the first. Mostly minor stuff. Like some weird, like switching to a character and the camera is like stuck in the floor like 100 feet down. So I'm just looking up at my character and all the geometry is looking weird because I'm like inside of it. I had one freeze on me in the middle of a level, which was fun, that I was trying to 100%. And there's like one specific spot in one of the levels. It's the level where you fight Scarecrow at the end. And in the room leading up to him, there's a little area down below. And if you go down there to grab something, because there's like a collectible down there, the AI companion will follow you, but it won't climb up the ladder. It'll just continuously throw itself off of a cliff. It'll just repeatedly kill itself. And like there's no way to stop it. You just have to like do this weird thing where you like switch to them and then try to like jump on the ladder and then switch to the other character, like switch back, because like then the CPU is going to take over for them and jump down and it can't figure out the ladder. So you have to play this weird like hot potato so that around like the AI. Very specific gripe, but like, yeah, I don't know. That feels like a C-class bug kind of thing, if you know what I mean. Or a D class or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I had a good time. I did like the open world. I liked the fact that it had, visually, it's always like sunset or like sunrise. I think it's like supposed to be like sunrise, or dusk or something like that, but in the rain. And there's this very pretty looking open world where it's always raining, but there's like the sunlight is like this golden orange, but only on like one side of the sky. It's a nice looking open world. And it was fun to explore. It was genuinely like fun to go around and scan an area and then tick off all the boxes. So yeah, like a solid like first effort for an open world attempt, but kind of messy and a little bit unfocused, you know. Nonetheless, it still has the kind of solid core foundation of the gameplay, so that kind of holds it up. That's my thoughts on Lego Batman 2. Can you believe I had such deep thoughts on a game like that? I can. Well, I probably don't have as deep thoughts on WOWOW Korone Box. This is a very short little thing, but WOWOW Korone Box is a little game that I played last night. It is a Korone fan game. Korone Inugami. The dog from HoloLive. I love Korone. She's a funny dog, and she has someone. There's a fan game that's under the Holo Indie label, which is essentially the officially endorsed FanWorks label that Cover Corporation has, where you can make fan stuff and then get it officially licensed, I guess, which also means that you can charge money for it. This is free. And it's a cute little game. It's a cute arcadey little game. It's like a top-down thing where you are Korone as a little pixel character. And you have these little stages where you are running around, and there's it's called Korone Box because there's boxes that you pick up and they change what weapon you're holding. And each time you get a box, each time you pick up a box, it increases your score by like 1. And it's basically just like an endurance thing for how long can you avoid the enemies, how many boxes can you pick up every like 10 or so, like a boss spawns kind of thing. In just this one like enclosed level top-down thing. It's mostly just kind of like, I like it just for it's a very simple, solid kind of game. It has very simple mechanics, but it's got a ton of like references and stuff, and I like that. It has a bunch of like funny voice lines taken from like clips of her. Korone has this, I feel like it's really easy to draw inspiration for something based off of her, because one of the things that I think is really funny about her stream is that she will routinely make these very funny, weird looking MS Paint drawings of little characters and stuff to represent things. And she will like, the best I can describe it as like do like a little puppet show with them. She does it like all the time. She'll just like imports those images into OBS and then like manipulates them around and does these very funny, cute little skits with like drawings of hers. It's great. So there's all of these over the years. There's just all of these little characters that she's drawn, which are perfect to draw on for like, oh, a little enemy for a game, you know, that's themed around her. Yeah, and I don't know, it's just a fun game about getting a high score. It's a score attack kind of game. And it's free. Check it out if you like the coronavirus. Is this going to be the last thing I'm going to talk about? Maybe it will be. The last thing in my notes is a little game that I played. I had my eye on it for a bit. It's called Pixel Gun 3D. So I basically got reminded. I saw this thing that was like, hey, this game that's been around for forever, Pixel Gun 3D, it's finally coming to PC. It's coming to Steam. It's been a mobile game. And I looked at it and I was like, hang on. I remember this game. I used to play this on like my iPad when I was a kid. I used to play Pixel Gun 3D. It was like basically a Minecraft aesthetic first-person shooter that had like a decent little single-player mode for like a kid at least. That was just like a wave, like defeat waves kind of thing, like eliminate all enemies on this map. And it had a bunch of different guns, and I never dipped into the multiplayer aspect of it, but I I remember the gameplay being like pretty fun, and I always liked the aesthetic. I was like, oh, it's coming to Steam. That's nice. So it finally dropped on Steam. It's a free-to-play game. It is a very direct mobile port, like menus and all. And I played it. I was like, all right, so like, what's this about? It, I like the style. I like. That's why I wanted to like BattleBit, and then BattleBit I thought sucked ass. I want like a fun, low poly, like blocky Minecrafty FPS game that's good. So I was like, okay, let's check out Pixel Gun. And in the time since I was like a 9-year-old, 10-year-old kid, a lot has changed about that game. Wow. That thing has been fucking sodomized with microtransactions. Like, oh my god, that is like the most like buy things, spend money game I have played in a very long time. And not in any even particularly special way. It was just like everything you could ever imagine, right? Like, there's a battle pass, and there's like 1,000 different guns, and you can unlock them very slowly, or you can pay for a loot box to open up a gun, and it could be a good one, or no, you're not even getting a gun for it. You're getting like a blueprint crafting material for the gun, which you combine with other stuff that, maybe you could unlock that, but also maybe like you could pay money for it to get it faster. And there's like a battle pass, and there's like 100 different game modes, and there's like a fucking battle royale Fortnite ripoff, and there's like and like all the guns, all the like best guns, it's just like this insanely power crept game where there's these like ridiculous guns that you, like, it is so pay to win. As soon as I realized, like, wow, that gun seems really powerful. And then I would look it up, and I was like, oh yeah, you have to basically spend money for this if you want to get it in any time at all. So creating this thing where you're some kid and you don't have choices. You're going to play a free-to-play game. You're like stuck in this little box of playing Pixel Gun 3D. And then you're like, oh boy, I'm too invested in this game. I have to spend a lot of time or money to get these good guns. It's like a class system. It's like a caste system, literally, with like the haves and the have-nots. That creates this and how do you ascend? How do you ascend to the haves? You got to pay more money, kid. It was like, oh man. And you know what sucks? Is the gameplay is pretty fun. It is a pretty solid little shooter with a cool art style and some cool looking maps. I really like the aesthetic again. But oh my god, all of these just awful systems that surround it make it like just like so gross. Just such a bad taste in my mouth. That was like, okay, I think I put like maybe an hour or two into it, and then I was like, all right, I'm good, I'm done with that. I don't I don't want to get sucked into this. This game is the kind of thing where it's like, this is the last thing I want to get invested in, because it's so predatory, and you can really tell that like whoever the publisher is really does not give a fuck about their customers. Like, it feels so soulless, and it's sad because I remember this game being cool when I was a kid, and I looked it up, like, what happened to this game? And surprise, surprise, they got bought out. The developer got bought out, or by a publisher or something. And slowly over time, as the years went on, they introduced this, and here's like a cosmetic thing that you can pay for, and then here's a battle pass, and then here's a Fortnite mode, because we're trying to stay relevant. And then just over time, just like a death by 1,000 cuts, or boiling the frog, would take your pick of a metaphor. It ended up in this state, and I was like, oh man, that sucks. That sucks. It would be nice if there was some kind of like vanilla fan version of it, but that'll probably never exist. Excuse me. I just want a game like this that doesn't suck ass, you know? That's my frustration. That's my frustration. I just want like a cool FPS. Like, oh, it's got mixed. Yeah, when I downloaded it, it was like there weren't any reviews yet. Let's see. Most helpful reviews. Let's see. 30 hours at it's not recommended. 52 hours on record. 30 hours at the review time. Imagine playing a game mode, any game mode, and everyone keeps getting killed by the Poop Gun 3000. Because of this, you think the Poop Gun 3000 is the best weapon in the game. You check the store and realize that it costs 1 million coins. Determined, you spend hours and hours grinding so you can buy the Poop Gun 3000. You know that you could easily obtain the coins via microtransactions, but you don't want to spend a single cent on the game. After you've spent hours playing the game, getting 1 coin every match, fighting those with the Poop Gun 3000 and dying to those with the Poop Gun 3000, you finally afford the Poop Gun 3000. You then join a match, expecting all of the hours spent grinding to pay off, only to get killed by the never-before-seen Poop Gun 3001. That is how I described playing this game. The next one, regretting a free purchase is insane. Oh my god. Yeah. Yeah, all of these are just about the pay to win. Like, the positive reviews are just people saying that it sucks. That's like a meta, right? Because certain review sites like Metacritic will put, like, I remember that Metacritic would I forgot what game it was. I think it was maybe Cyberpunk on release, but like, because Metacritic will put the highest, it'll arrange it from the highest scores to the lowest. So people started scoring the game like 10 out of 10, so that and then writing awful reviews so that those would be the first things people would see. Even the good reviews were terrible. Yeah. Like, fun. It just sucks because it's like, it's this fun game with this nice flow. It's not too fast. It's not too like slow feeling. The guns feel pretty decent to shoot. I wish there was like a little more feedback on them, but like it feels pretty good as a shooter. The matches are very short. They're like 3 minutes or something, and you're just in and out, in and out, in and out. You're just always in the loop, and it's like a very fun, fast moving multiplayer shooter. With like solid gameplay and a cool art style, and then, oh god, all this shit. It was just a real bummer. I feel like I should talk about something fun to end off the podcast, because I cannot in good conscience recommend Pixel Gun. What did I do? What else did I do? What's fun? I've been playing a lot more FF7. Game's still good. Hey, while we were talking about JoJo, I got this idea, right? I got like a pitch. You're like, okay. Obviously, like a pitch for like a JoJo game, you're like, oh, like a fighting game? And like, yes, of course I would want like an Arxis or like a French-bred JoJo fighting game. Of course I would want that. That's like a given. But I had this other idea. I'm like, man, why haven't they done... They should make like a GTA game, but it's part 4. Wouldn't that be cool? You got like this open world with like a couple like different playable characters like Josuke, Okuyasu, Koichi, and you like play through the story of part 4 with like this big open world running around Morio, going like, you know, the outskirts of the town. It's like a small town, so you can be mostly like on foot. There could be like mini games. You can go to like all the different, like as you go throughout the story and you meet different characters, like, we can go to Tonyo's. I want to walk into like Tonyo's restaurant and stuff like that, you know? I want to check out the school that they go to. Stuff like that. I think that could be really fun, and just give it like a cool, like, I don't know, like a Yakuza. No, not GTA. Yakuza. That's probably the better. That's probably the better comparison point. A Yakuza game that's based on Part 4. I think that could be really fun. I'm surprised that something like that hasn't happened yet. That's my positive thing. That's my little positive thought. Think on that. Think on that a little bit. Anyway, yeah, I think I'll probably call it a day. I'm also very hungry. So, yep, thank you so much for listening. If you've been listening this far, listen to me ramble. If you have a question, please leave it down in the comments below, but phrase it in the form of a question, because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud, whatever I say at the end of these things. The video's coming along. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Hope everyone's had a good time. Maybe I'll get back to a normal schedule for these podcasts sometime. I don't know. I'm not obligated to do anything. Although I do like recording these. Bye.